All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Lori province in Armenia. We're up here in the mountains. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of Armenia. And it is not quite so beautiful in Los Angeles right now. As a matter of fact, LA is still burning. Some people accused me yesterday of being hyperbolic in saying that LA was burning. But no, not being hyperbolic. It's still burning. And that's not overstating the case in any way, shape, or form, because the left-wing agitators who are arranging these protests want this to happen, and they're taking steps to make it happen. We're going to break all that down for you today in on today's Hot Zone. Now, uh, I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can because it's already late over here. It's 10 o'clock at night, and we've got a tour going on. We've got a lot of great people. Some of them are sitting around here watching as we do the live. And so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. So forgive me if I'm not answering any questions you have on the chat over there. But uh, do make sure, please, that you post where you're watching from. I love watching that. I love seeing where everybody's coming in from. There's somebody from Pennsylvania, and we got Texarkana, Arkansas, and Kenton. I don't know if no, that's your name, I guess. uh, People coming in from all over the place, all over the planet, which is amazing. And so post where you're watching from. Gold Run, California. So Juan Espinoza says, I'm a Californian and I agree with you, Chuck. South Dakota, Salem, Oregon, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma City, going like crazy. All right. Fantastic. Wow. Thank you very much for watching. That really helps the algorithm too. And so make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast and hit that like button while you're at it. And let's get into it. I've been really busy over here in Armenia on this tour, but fortunately for you today, we had a long day of driving. And so while we were driving, I was on my phone. I was reading all sorts of stuff about what's going on over there in Los Angeles. And let me just start by saying this. Glendale, California, which is part of Los Angeles, has something like 2 million Armenians living there. There's almost more people in Glendale, California from Armenia than there are Armenians in Armenia. Armenia is one of those few countries that has more people in their diaspora than they have actually in their country. Israel is like that too. So it's interesting to me to be here in Armenia because without a doubt, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, 100%, there is no place in this country where I'm sitting right now that is as dangerous as Glendale, California, without a doubt. A lot of people fled this region, mostly the what was Armenia but is now Turkey, back during the Armenian genocide, because it was a very dangerous neighborhood. And this is still, this place that I'm sitting is still under threat from Azerbaijan and from Turkey. However, there is no neighborhood in Armenia where I would not let my wife go at 11 o'clock at night by herself and walk alone. But I would not let her do that in Glendale, California. So it's just interesting to me that there are all these Armenians over there, and they're there because they can make a lot of money in California. But it's actually much safer in their home country. And so that's before the riots took place. But now that we have what you could nicely call a failure of civility in uh, Los Angeles, things have gotten a lot more dicey in that place. I'm going to show you some of that. Now, we're going to talk a lot about how this is organized. I've spent a lot of time reporting on these kinds of riots across the United States. As a matter of fact, for 2 solid years during the first Trump administration, my only job was to go around the country to all of these protests and riots and report on them for the National Rifle Association's TV station, NRA TV. So I spent a lot of time in Seattle, a lot of time in Portland, a lot of time in Washington, D.C., a lot of time in New York, covering all of these riots. I'm going to tell you some of the things I learned about how they are funded and how they are arranged, because it matters. I mean, it's important, right? Uh, these are not just spontaneous uprisings. And the news would like to tell you that uh, ICE came in and they were really mean and they made everybody's tummy hurt. And so they just got together and they came out in force to counter what these big, mean bullies were doing from ICE. When in reality, ICE had legally justified federal warrants for the arrest of wanted criminals who happened also to be illegal immigrants. And when they came to serve those justified warrants, there were people waiting that were being organized on social media, through social media, to come out and counter ICE and present a dilemma to the federal government. Now, this is what you have to keep in mind. This is all about giving the federal government a dilemma that there's no good answer to. And it's actually very smart. It's what you want to do in a war. You don't want to present your enemy with problems. Problems can be solved. You want to present them with dilemmas where there's no good option. There's no good choice that they can make. Every choice that they could make actually serves in your own interests. And that's what these protests are doing. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to explain it to you in detail as we go through this. All right. So let's stick with it. Now, a lot of people, somebody's asking Antifa. Look, Antifa is definitely part of this, but they are pawns in this. Okay. I've followed Antifa a lot. I've done a lot of research on these guys, and I've been with them in tons of protests. And let me tell you something about Antifa. They are skinny little punks who are essentially LARPing, living in their mommy's basement. They don't have jobs, and they're just, this is fun for them. Antifa does this because it's fun, because they get to go poke poking at the federal agents with sticks, and they know that the federal agents can't shoot them in the face, which is probably what they deserve. But since the federal agents can't shoot them in the face, they can just keep doing it. And it doesn't matter if they're using lethal or potentially lethal force. They know that their enemy, the federal agents, cannot use legal force. And so it's just a lark. It's fun for them. But they are being used by other entities to, again, give the government dilemmas that only serve, that any response to that dilemma only serves to bolster the position of these other entities that I'm going to talk to you about. Okay. So now these riots supposedly started because of immigration enforcement. Federal agents enforcing the law in the United States. Now, you would think that enforcing the law in the United States would be a good thing. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Venezuelans and Cubans and Haitians and Somalis and Afghans and Syrians all come to the United States, because we enforce the law. We have laws, and those laws make our society predictable and safe. And that's a good thing. That's something that everybody wants around the world. Believe me, if you're living in a place like Haiti or a failed state uh, like Somalia, you want nothing more than to just go to some place where you know you can walk down the street and somebody cannot just walk right up to you and murder you and just walk away, and there's nobody even to try to stop them or deter them from what they're doing. So they come to America for our laws, for our robust legal system. But now, because America is a very sort of bipolar country, what I mean is there are two countries living in America. There is the country of the left and the country of the right, the country that believes that there is such a thing as right and wrong, And what your opinion is doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they are right and wrong, because those laws are set from an objective standard outside of ourselves. And there's a group of people in America that believes that yes, right and wrong are an objective thing. And there's another group of people who believes that right and wrong are like flavors of ice cream. Just choose the one that works for you. Just speak your truth, right? It's your truth. So you choose whatever truth you want. The problem is truth is not like ice cream. Truth is like insulin. It's like medicine. It's life or death. It's black or white. And even the people who believe that truth is not black or white, that truth is just subjective and you can just pick whatever truth you want, that argument commits suicide. They can't hold to that argument without calling on an objective truth. What I mean is, I've had discussions with people and I've said, so you're saying it's true that there is no truth? And they're like, well, yeah, everybody can just pick whatever truth they want. So you're saying it's objectively true that there is no truth. And they can't see that. That's why the Bible calls this depravity. Because when people deny God, God gives them over to a depraved mind, and they become depraved. They become where they cannot understand the concept of truth, because truth is tied up in the concept of a righteous, sovereign God. So those two countries that live in America cannot coexist. It doesn't work. They're mutually exclusive. And because of that, whoever happens to be able to vote in their candidate changes the country to their country for whatever period of time that candidate holds office. And when it switches to the other country, then we have a different country and we present a different country to the world. And that's why the world is so confused right now about America, because the America that they see today is a completely different country than it was a year ago under that doddering Roomba of a president we had named Joe Biden. So this makes it very, very difficult. But when you go to these protests, what you have is a group of people who's they've chosen a truth, quote unquote, and because it commits suicide on its face, they believe it's true, there is no truth. They can believe anything is right. They can, and go back, I don't know, about a week ago, I did a live about this specifically, talking about just after that young Jewish couple was murdered in the streets of Washington, D.C. And I talked about how could a 35-year-old guy decide to just walk down the street in Washington, D.C. and randomly murder two people he doesn't know. If he had asked them for the time, they probably would have given him the time. If they had asked him for $1, they probably would have given him $1. But instead, he just pulled out a gun and murdered them in cold blood and literally threw away the rest of his life, because now this guy's going to be in jail forever, right? If he doesn't get the death penalty, which he should. So what would possess a guy to do that? To just murder two people you don't even know? To make a statement? What? That is what a depraved mind will do. And right now, we have probably tens of thousands of people who have been given over to a depraved mind. They've been infected by the mob mentality in California, burning cars, destroying businesses, and wounding and trying to kill police officers and other people. For what? Because the police deigned to try and enforce the law. Look, these people, many of those people are illegal immigrants themselves. in the United States. So it's understandable that they don't want to be grabbed and deported. Okay, I get that. But maybe it would be a better idea just to maybe go somewhere else rather than band together and attack the police. I mean, what gives them the right to attack law enforcement when they literally came here because we have law enforcement? Because they don't have law enforcement in Venezuela that's fair. They don't have law enforcement in Haiti that's fair. The police there are more likely to shoot you than they are to look at you. So, I mean, they don't understand the hypocrisy, the irony of you came to America because we have a legal system that makes that holds up everything that we have in our country. And now you're attacking that very legal system. They don't get that. They don't see that. But the people who are funding it and facilitating it don't care, because all they're looking for, again, is to give our government a dilemma for which there is no good answer. So let's break that down and talk about that a little bit more. Folks, we got 3,600 people online, only 711 likes. I'm feeling a little unloved here. Do me a favor and go hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything, I promise. We're not going to spam you. Just punch the little thumbs up thingy, and that tells the algorithm more people need to be watching this. Look, we punch way above our weight. Our channel gets more people watching these live broadcasts than channels that have 2 or 3 times as many subscribers as we do. And that's all because you guys are so great about posting things in the chat and hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. So we've just got 2 new members. I just watched it happen in real time. 2 people just signed up or just subscribed to the channel. Thank you very much for doing that. All right, so let's talk about this some more. First, I want to go through a little bit, some of the signs that tell you that these riots are pre-planned, okay? So I'm going to see if I can make this work here. I'm not great with the whole technology thing, but here we go. Okay, so what you see here is a photograph from one of these riots. Now, this one happens to be from a Black Lives Matter rally. So, but suffice it to say, look at the shields that these people brought with them. All of these people are holding shields. And I can't tell from the picture if they're with Antifa or if they're just, whatever, normal protesters or whatever. But if you're just coming to legally protest, to lawfully protest, exercise your First Amendment rights, you don't have any need for a shield, because we have the right to protest in the United States. People do it all the time, and they don't get shot. They don't get arrested. They don't get blown up. They're allowed to march and allowed to protest. So if that's all you're doing, you don't need a shield. Now, what I want to point out here is that these shields are, they take time to make, right? Oops, hang on, I'm on the wrong page here. This one. Okay, so they take time to make. So look at these guys with these shields. They're made from trash cans, and so they cut up trash cans and they, I don't know, rivet handles on the back of them. They're all wearing helmets, and look at this guy on the right of the screen here. He's got a respirator on to avoid being tear gassed. Well, again, it takes time to make these shields. They had to pre-plan this. They came here to this protest planning to be tear gassed because they've got gas masks on. They were planning to break the law. They were planning to present the police with a reason to tear gas them. Now, what else do you see in the picture? There's a couple guys in the back, or three black umbrellas back there. Now, those umbrellas come in very handy for protesters. Number one, they keep the rain off, of course, okay? But number two, they can stop the pepper balls that the police fire when they're trying to get people to disperse. So the police have these essentially paintball guns, and they fire paintballs that have pepper spray in them. So they're an irritant, right? And so if the police pull out their paintball guns and start shooting, all you have to do is open your umbrella and point it at the police, and you've got a shield that will protect you from those pepper balls. It also serves, I have found personally, as a way to block the press from being able to film you as you go about committing felonies in the street in a major American city. So, for example, in 2017, January, I was at the first Trump inauguration, and Antifa, Black Bloc were all over the place. And when they saw me filming, a lot of them would come up and open their umbrellas in front of me, and so I couldn't see anything but umbrella. And you try to get around them, they just move, and they move with you, and they won't let you film. Now, for people that are out there supposedly exercising their right to free speech, they sure don't like to allow other people to exercise their right to free speech, do they? And so obviously it's a sunny day in this picture. Why is everybody carrying a big black umbrella? Well, it's not because they were expecting rain. That's all I need to say about that. The bottom line is there's a tweet that I saw from one of these Antifa guys where he's trying to raise money to be able to make more of these shields for one of their direct actions, they call it. Okay. And he's saying, hey, we can make 50 or 60 of these shields in a day, and we just need, $35 a shield, and we'll make a bunch of shields for everybody so that we can go out and protest some more. This shows, number one, they're out there raising money. Number two, this is premeditated. They plan to go out and commit felonies or commit crimes that would necessitate them having a shield. And so this just shows a level of forethought for this that, we ought to take note of. Okay, now let's look at this video. This shows at one of the protests, a bunch of shields and signs being passed out.
They came with a goddamn U-Haul for war.
I'll turn them down a little bit so you can hear me. But you see here, they've got a U-Haul truck, and they're passing out signs, and the signs they're actually shields made to look like signs, right? Now, I have seen this with my own eyes. When you see a U-Haul truck show up and start handing out this stuff, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that this was pre-planned and somebody paid for it. Somebody had to go pay money to rent a U-Haul truck. Somebody had to pay money to make all those signs or build all those shields. And then somebody had to drive it out there and arrange for everybody to come out and get those shields and take them and use them against the police. What kind of forethought does that tell you that they engaged in before these protests, right? Okay, now let's move on. So LA, we'll back up. The video I showed you yesterday, I think I still have it on here. Nope, this one right here, where they're throwing rocks at federal law enforcement vehicles that are moving away in convoy from the scene where they executed these warrants, and they're smashing their windows. And it's not just this one guy. If you look in the background, there's multiple people back there smashing windows out of these vehicles. There was another video that came out yesterday on social media from inside one of these vehicles showing how just terrifying it must have been to drive through that gauntlet of people throwing rocks at you. These are not armored vehicles. They don't have bulletproof glass. So they're getting their windows broken. And who has to pay to fix those windows? You do. And I do. That's taxpayer money. Okay, so these jackwagons feel like they're justified to go out and destroy the work of other man's hands, spend money that comes out of your pocket and my pocket to try to make a point. And many of these guys likely are not even in the country legally. Now, what is the dilemma that they are, the decision dilemma that they are giving the government? Well, first of all, what is a decision dilemma? It's tactics designed to trap law enforcement in a lose-lose situation. They call it a decision dilemma because it's a psychological strategy where every possible police response plays into the activist's hands. So, real example, rioters block the road using, like, let's say newspaper machines. I've seen that, or dumpsters. Okay, so they take a bunch of dumpsters, they roll them out in the middle of the road and block the road. Now what they're doing is they're essentially kidnapping everybody who needs to use that road, because now those people are being held against their will. They cannot go anywhere because the road is blocked. Now, what does the law enforcement do? Well, they need to remove that barricade. But the protesters show up, and let's say they show up with a child, maybe a couple children, which they do all the time. If you watch some of these videos, you'll see that they actually will bring children to these riots, even babies. And now there's a protester holding the baby, and law enforcement is going to risk harming, or at least looking like they're going to harm that child if they move in and use force to try to clear out those rioters, right? So they can either back off and lose control and just cede the area to the rioters, which makes law enforcement look weak, and the rioters win. Or they can move in and use force to remove those barricades with these people and their babies and the women and children, whatever. And they can look like bullies and thugs. Either way, the protesters win. Either way, the rioters win. So it's not about winning the street battle per se. It's about winning the optics. And that's what these guys are out to do. They're trying to win the optics, okay? So their tactics are selected not for how effective they will be on the ground, but for how they will look on video. They don't care how effective those things will be. They just care how they will look. Those protesters want to appear like they're the sympathetic underdogs, even when they're the ones that are escalating the violence. So, and this is one thing that they kind of did wrong in the riots that we saw over the last couple of days. These guys were calling Waymo taxi. So if you're not familiar with Waymo, Waymo is a company that has automated taxi service. There's no driver in the vehicle. It's driving around completely automated. It's the freakiest thing you've ever seen. I was in San Francisco and I was in a taxi with a driver, or maybe driving a rental car. I think it was driving a rental car. And I stopped at a stoplight and a car pulled up next to me. I look over and there's nobody in the driver's seat. I'm like, what the? There's nobody there. There was a guy sitting in the back seat, but there's nobody in the driver's seat. And these Waymo cars have all kinds of sensors and cameras and stuff on them, and they're actually very safe. And they have them in many cities across, especially the Western United States. So you can call one of these Waymo taxis. They'll automatically come to your location to pick you up. So what these protesters did yesterday is they called a whole bunch of these Waymo taxis all to one location. And when they showed up, they just busted their windows out and set them on fire. Now, what do these guys have against Waymo? Waymo's probably a woke company, I would venture to say, because they're based in San Francisco, I think. that, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on that, I'm sure. But uh, what do they have against Waymo? Well, nothing. It doesn't matter. They just want to destroy, and they want to burn. They want to wreck things. Okay, to show their displeasure with the federal government. And why? Because that creates a dilemma for the federal government. Well, President Trump is a master at what you would call political jiu-jitsu. And so he called their bluff. He called out the National Guard. About 300 of an initial 2,000 California National Guardsmen were federalized yesterday and sent to Los Angeles to help the police maintain order. Now, the police are having a hard time maintaining order, not because they're not capable, but because the mayor of Los Angeles and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, are both on the side of the protesters and are actively trying to, number one, foment more violence through their words. They're making speeches that are meant to rile up the protesters and cause more violence. They're not outright directly calling for violence because that would be a felony. And Tom Homan, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, has already threatened to arrest the governor of California and the mayor of San Francisco, Karen Bass, because of this. But what they're trying to do is tread the line very carefully, just tiptoe along that line and continue to speak out against ICE, against the federal government, against Donald Trump, and support the protesters and rioters in any way they can. And so there's no question that those two politicians are supporting what's going on in Los Angeles. They're trying to say, they're literally going on TV and saying, there's no problem. We got it under control. Oh, really? Karen Bass called the police department and took control from the police chief and told the police to stand down and would not let them go to help the federal agents when the federal agents were literally calling and saying, this is life or death. They hid under an overpass for 2 hours yesterday and watched their vehicles get burned. These were highway patrolmen, actually. Watched their vehicles get smashed and burned by people throwing big rocks off the overpass onto their vehicles. And they're calling for backup, and backup wouldn't come because Karen Bass took control of them and told them to stand down. Now, the target of these rioters is not the police. The target is you, the people watching YouTube or watching CNN or watching TikTok. You are their target. And what they're trying to do is whip up that fervor, that anger, and get you angry enough to go out in the streets and start wrecking things as well. And we're seeing it start to spread. Now we're expecting that today in the United States, there will be similar riots in other cities across California and maybe other places in the United States. This is what we saw during the George Floyd riots. It started out in Minneapolis and it spread not just around the United States, all over the planet. There were people rioting. Now, expressing your displeasure with police brutality is one thing. Burning down a Target or looting a Walmart or attacking elderly passersby in the street just to express your displeasure, that's a completely different thing. So what you need to do is just follow the money. Now, I did this years ago with the immigration issue, and I was able to prove by going and looking at the annual statements of the Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros's nonprofit. Open Society Foundation publishes where they give grants they have to in their annual statement. So I went and read the annual statement, which is very dry and 120 pages long. But when you read through there, you start to see that they are giving grant money to these other organizations who were not just aiding and abetting migrants to come illegally to the United States, but actually organizing and facilitating the caravans that were leaving from southern Mexico and walking up into the United States. So George Soros's Open Society Foundation was actively funding the people who were paying for these people to come up to the US. Because look, these people are coming from Venezuela and Haiti and Cuba and even Guatemala and Honduras, El Salvador. They don't have the money to travel. Okay? Look, it costs them thousands of dollars and it takes months for them to make it from Guatemala or further south or anywhere else, Somalia, Syria, you name it, Indonesia, and come all the way up through Mexico into the United States. It takes them months and it takes thousands of dollars. And they probably get robbed along the way a couple of times, so it takes even more money. Where do you think they're getting all that money? There are NGOs. We proved this. I mean, you go look at the reporting that I've done, that Michael Yon has done, that Blue Ramirez has done, that many others have done on the migration crisis. And we've shown, we've proven. I mean, Todd Bensman is a absolute first-rate journalist, and he proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt on a trip with me in Tapachula, Mexico, that the United Nations was passing out debit cards to the migrants with money that came in part from the US taxpayer and facilitating, paying for them to be able to survive long enough to get to the United States. They were paying for it. You were paying for it. And when Donald Trump closed the border, when he took office this time in January, a lot of those people ended up stuck at the southern border of the United States and couldn't get across because now there's US troops there guarding the border. They couldn't cross. And now they want to go back to Venezuela or they want to go back to Guatemala or wherever, but they can't. Why? Because those same NGOs will not give them money to go south. They will not give them money to go back to their home country if they want to go. Now, to be fair, the Mexican government did spend some money to provide buses for people that wanted to go back to Guatemala. That was in their own interest. They wanted to get those people out of Mexico. And but those NGOs that were paying for people to come north would not pay for people to go south. What does that tell you about their agenda? Okay. Now, it bears pointing out that these riots are not cheap. The protesters have pre-printed signs, and if you look closely at those signs, they are professionally printed. These are not scrawled with a marker. A lot of them are printed to look like they're scrawled with a marker, but they're not actually. They're actually printed signs, and I've seen them up close. And they have the print shop down in the corner. They all come from the same print shop. So when a U-Haul truck shows up with a whole truckload of these signs and starts passing them out, you're looking at thousands of dollars worth of printing. Many times those signs are backed by plywood and they have very heavy, thick wooden posts that they're on. And some of them I've even seen, they're backed with wood, with plywood, but the front is cardboard glued onto the plywood to make it look like a cardboard sign, but it's actually made of plywood. Why? Because you can whack somebody with a plywood sign and actually do some damage, right? And that's the reason they do that. I've seen that many times. These people have coordinated communications channels. I've literally seen Antifa walking around. They've got Baofeng radios, and they're coordinating to block off the streets around where their riot is going to take place. They stop traffic. They won't let people in or out. Now, they don't have a right to do this. They have no authority to stop you from going in, but they will stop you. They block the streets and they communicate with each other. And now, where are they getting the money for those radios? Ask yourself that question. These are the same people who want to defund the police, who say we need to get rid of the police. They don't want to defund the police. They want to become the police. And they show that by their actions. They also get, when if they do get arrested, they get support from organizations that will bail them out of jail. I was telling somebody about this today. I did some reporting on this myself about the environmental justice movement a few years ago. In West Virginia, the people who were against mountaintop removal mining, where they would come in and blow the top of the mountain off and get the coal out, and then they had to actually put the mountain back together when they were done, as that's part of the law. But these people were just really mad that they were destroying the environment by blowing the top of the mountains off. Okay, fine. Well, in order to protest, they didn't just go stand in front of City Hall or anything like that. No, they broke into the mines, which is private property. They destroyed equipment and defaced equipment, and then chained themselves to like bulldozers and trees and things like that to keep the miners from being able to do their work, which cost the mines millions of dollars. And so the police would show up and they would arrest these people. They'd have to climb up on the bulldozers or climb up the tree, cut the people loose, put handcuffs on them, take them to jail. But you know what? The only thing they can charge them with is trespassing for the most part. And trespassing is like a parking ticket. Like you can get 100 of them and then nothing happens. You just pay your ticket and you're fine. And so these guys, the cost of the fine for the trespassing fee was like $280, I think, something like that, about 300 bucks. And these people would get arrested, go to jail, get pay their fine, get set free, go back, and the next day they would go out and do the same thing over again, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Every day they were out there, and we're talking about dozens of people. Now, I wondered where these people got their money. So they had a house that they were renting that was down Route 3 outside of Beckley. So I went down there and just walked up and knocked on the door. And a guy answered the door, some hippie looking dude. And I said, hey, I'm a journalist and I just wanted to know why you guys are doing this. And they're like, oh, a journalist. And they just assumed that because I was a journalist that I was on their side. And so they're like, hey, brother, come on in. And they brought me inside and they showed me around. And I was just like, wow, you know, that's amazing. You guys are doing this. And I said, how do you make your money? How do you pay for all this? And they said, oh, we get grants from the US government. I was like, wait, what? How do you get grants from the government to go get arrested? And they're like, well, they're called environmental justice grants. And they're given out by the EPA. And we have that guy over there. See that skinny, pasty looking dude over there? He sits at a computer all day and just writes grant proposals for us. And we get hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. So we use that to pay our fines so that we can keep doing our direct actions. So that's US taxpayer dollars that are going to pay for people to break the law. This is every bit, this is just like the United States paying for Hamas and Hezbollah and paying for Israel to fight Hamas and Hezbollah. So we're paying the police and we're paying the protesters. Make that make sense, right? Make that make sense, okay? So they have not just bail support and legal defense for all of that. Some of that was actually being raised by Kamala Harris, you know, back during the first Trump administration, during the George Floyd riots. But they also have paid organizers. A lot of the people that are out there protesting at these protests are literally professional protesters. When I spent 2 years covering these things, I met these people myself. I started to get to know them. I'd say, like, wait, I'd be in Portland covering a riot, and I'd be like, wait a minute, I saw that same fat dude wearing a dress with his hair painted purple in New York last week. And wait a minute, that van with all the, you know, hippy dippy stickers pasted all over it and coexist and all that garbage, that same van was in Washington, D.C. last month when I was out there for the anti-gun protest. And like what how are they getting all over the country? I mean, it costs money to drive a car all the way across the country. And these people don't have real jobs. So they are getting money from organizations. Now, it's not just from the EPA, but that they are getting government money whenever they can. They found lots of ways to game the system, I promise you. Lots of ways. But they're also getting money from organizations like the Open Society Foundation, the Tides Foundation. Um, there's, oh gosh, there's a whole big long list. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's like the Sierra Club. Okay, the Sierra Club's about preserving the environment. But the Sierra Club doesn't want to get their hands dirty with direct action, spiking trees that might get somebody killed or burning down car dealerships or something like that. And so the Sierra Club gives grants to the Earth First movement, which is the militant arm of, their environmental justice people. And they're the ones that go out and burn down car dealerships. But they're getting money from the Sierra Club. You might give money to the Sierra Club and have no idea. But that's not all. They also are giving money to LGBTQ plus minus $ ampersand exclamation point people. I don't want to leave anybody out there. And they are, they're giving money to these other organizations. And guess what? When there's an anti-gun rally or a Black Lives Matter rally, guess who shows up? All of the LBGTQ ampersand plus sign minus sign, those people they all show up at the anti-gun rally or at the other. So what I'm telling you is that at all of these riots, it's all the same people. Now, there are obviously going to be some local people that are going to get swept up in that, and they're going to see it on social media and go, yeah, I want to go burn cars too. Believe it or not, there's a lot of feral youth in the United States that don't have a daddy to slap them upside the head and make them go do some work. So, I mean, they're just bored and they want to go out and LARP. And you know what LARPing is, You have you ever seen LARPing? It's where people dress up like knights and they carry like foam swords and stuff. And I mean, there's a whole subculture of people that does this. I don't understand it. But they go out camping and they have like medieval battles with foam swords and like, ha, how about you? And they're out there fighting each other. And that's fun for them. And they dress up and they speak like they're in Elizabethan England or something. It's weird, just weird. And that's what these Antifa guys are doing. They're just out there LARPing. They're just, hey, we just go have some fun. But it requires transport. Maybe they get their mommy to lend them the car. Mommy, can I have the Buick again so I can go LARPing? And they use that to get there, but they got to get money to get there. They got to have food and lodging when they get where they're going. And I've literally seen this at riots all over the United States. You go to where they're staging the riot from, because they always have a staging area. That's where they hand out the signs and they put on their black masks and they get all fired up and they chant their chants and clap their claps, and they don't want to engage in violence, so they don't clap. They do this instead of clapping. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It makes you want to throat punch them. Seriously, these guys are over there and some guy stands up and gives a real rousing speech and everybody goes, you just like, ah. So, but in that staging area, what you'll find is like craft services, like they have at movies. They'll have caterers that are bringing in food, and they'll have, bologna sandwiches and frappuccinos and stuff out there for, whatever those people like. And somebody's got to pay for all that. They'll even have clothing that they can wear if their own clothing gets dirty or saturated with tear gas or something. They can go and they can change into clean clothes and keep on rocking. The leadership, the people that organize all that stuff have salaries to be paid. They got to get supplies. They need helmets, radios, fireworks. Those things are consumables. They're not cheap. And they spend thousands of dollars on the big fireworks. I mean, the big stuff. You know, you got that uncle. Everybody has that uncle who shows up at the 4th of July picnic at your house, and he brings fireworks that are like totally illegal and goes out in the backyard and starts blowing stuff up. It's awesome when you're a kid, right? These guys go get those fireworks. They go to that uncle, I guess, and they get those fireworks and they shoot them directly at the police. And I've seen people grievously injured with those things because it's like a mortar round without any shrapnel, but it's still got fire and it's still got explosions. So funding streams, where do they get this money? Well, they raise it online, social media. They're asking for donations. And they get donations from, mom and pops and, just regular people. But they also get a lot of donations from corporate, uh, from different companies and NGOs. And a lot of those NGOs actually get their money from grants from the US government. Um, Sometimes they get paid increasingly, they're getting paid in cryptocurrencies so that it can't be traced. And this is one of the things that they found with the Black Lives Matter movement is those guys, when George Floyd got killed, Black Lives Matter took off, and you had everybody from Coca-Cola to, Armor hot dogs. Everybody was giving money to Black Lives Matter. They made over $1 billion. And guess what? Not surprisingly, the leaders of Black Lives Matter somehow ended up with like $6 million homes. Wow, how about that? All over the place. So, one of the things you need to understand about many of these NGOs is that they're actually just shell companies. They're NGOs that are created specifically to get grants like that so that the money can be funneled through cryptocurrency and other things to help facilitate these protests. And you know what? When they do that, and once they can get uh, sort of, if not anonymous, at least pseudonymous donations, meaning cryptocurrency donations, they can get money from foreign entities. And that's where we start to get into the real dark money when you're talking about Qatar, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, giving money to people who will act as agents provocateurs and whip up fervor against the government in order to create chaos in the United States. There's one thing that I noticed when I was covering all these protests and riots around the country. Every one of them I went to in the United States, there was plenty of media there, without a doubt. But one thing that was just kind of stuck out was the fact that there were tons of Russian media at those protests. People from RT and people from Russian state media were all over those protests. Why? Because it's in the best interest of the Russian government to portray America as a place that is drowning in chaos. Now, if you live in America, you know most places in America are not having a bunch of jackasses throw rocks at the police right now. But those places that are, they have an outsized influence on the image that the United States portrays to the rest of the world because these media organizations come and report on that stuff and really pump it up, right? So they may not be actually encouraging or facilitating this stuff, although you could make an argument that they are encouraging other places to copycat them. But they are amplifying their message. And by so doing, it damages America's uh, standing overseas. And so this becomes not a domestic problem anymore. It becomes a national security problem. And that's really what I wanted to, that's the main point I wanted to make here with this today is that we're talking about a national security problem in the United States. Because these organizations, whether it's the Open Society Foundation or the Tides Foundation, or look, there's hundreds I mean, I was always confused, you know, when I was covering the caravans coming up through southern Mexico, and you'd have these guys that were inserting themselves between the migrants and the Mexican police and were trying to keep the Mexican police busy while the migrants escaped. And you like, where are you from? Because they're not Mexican, they're like, you know, Westerners or, you know, people from Europe or America. And they're from like some Norwegian anti-gun NGO. That's like, what the heck does that have to do with migrants doing a caravan to the United States? It doesn't. It doesn't matter because they all get funded from the same sources. And so they can get more funding from these dark money sources by showing up and protesting, even if their organization is supposed to be about, you know, LGBTQ stuff. Doesn't matter. They show up at the environmental justice protests, the anti-gun protests, the the pro-abortion protests, the anti-immigration protests. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry. The pro-immigration protest doesn't matter. The Hamas pro-Palestinian protests. All of them are the same people. That's what I'm trying to get across, and they are being funded in part by your tax dollars and in part by our enemies' tax dollars. And I don't know where you go from there. But the government of the United States is being given a dilemma right now. This is what we're watching unfold in real time as we watch these riots take place. This dilemma means that no matter what the government does, they lose. If California just calls off the police, just let these people give, as the mayor of Baltimore said one time when they were burning cars in her city, just give the rioters space to destroy. Give them some space to destroy things and get it out of their system, right? It doesn't matter if they do that. If they do that, the rioters win. And not just the rioters win, more importantly, our adversaries who are funding the rioters win. Because it makes America, it diminishes our standing overseas, and it is a national security issue. But if the Trump administration calls in the Marines and sends in tanks and starts hosing people down with water cannons and everything else, well, guess what? The rioters win in the court of public opinion. The rioters win in the media. And that itself becomes a national security issue for the United States. So look, we should all not be afraid to call something wrong if it's wrong. No question about it. And President Trump is doing the right thing by using a heavier hand than President Biden sure would have, or Kamala Harris sure would have, against these rioters. I'm not. I'm telling you, I am in agreement with what the president is doing because he's got two bad choices. He's making the best of two bad choices, right? And now the question is, does he have the stomach to see it through to the end? Does he have the stomach to declare an insurrection, which would allow him to supersede the Posse Comitatus Act and use American military troops to quash this insurrection, which really is not so much an insurrection as it is an invasion, because you're talking about violence being fomented by illegal immigrants, people who are here illegally. Last time I checked, if somebody that was not an American came to America and started burning things inside America, that would be called an invasion. That'd be called a war, an act of war. So President Trump needs to react accordingly. And the question is, does he have the stomach to see it through? I guess we will see. Now, you tell me, as we come down to the end of this live, do you think President Trump is doing the right thing? And do you think that they should declare an insurrection so that they can actually the U.S. military can use force against these rioters. It's happened before. The last time it happened was also in Los Angeles during the riots in 1990, what was that, 4? The Rodney King riots and all that. Do you agree that that is the direction we should go? So say yes or no in the chat. And somebody says 1,000%. Okay, I'm going to scroll through here real quick while I wait for your answers. I'm going to see if you got any questions. While I'm at it, folks, please go ahead and hit that like button. We got almost 6,000 people watching right now live, and we've already had over 40,000 people on watching, and we're about 2 minutes above the average view duration for your average YouTube video. That says a lot to YouTube and says more people need to be shown this video. So that's great. That's what we need to see. And you can help us do that by hitting the like button. Now, if you want to see more of my reporting and you want to have early access to a lot of the products that we put out, the tours that we run, like we're on right now in Armenia, go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter or a subscriber over there. You'll get access to lots of cool stuff. And that's what keeps us able to keep doing this job, to keep bringing you the news. So if you support us, it would mean a lot to me if you would help us sort of future-proof this ministry or whatever you want to call it, because look, the vagaries of YouTube mean that at any time YouTube could just shut us off. If I say the wrong thing, YouTube could close us down. So that's why we have this locals page. You go to chuckholton.com, it'll take you to locals, and you can sign up over there. And that shows us we have more than 20,000 people that support us over there, or that are, I'm sorry, subscribers over there. And so, that is very helpful if we get canceled on YouTube. So, all right, that's all I've got for today. We're just over an hour. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. God bless you, and we'll see you again next